Pasuk continues, it says, Vayishma Adonai et kolenu, and Hashem heard our voices. How do I know? It says the Haggadah that Hashem heard our voices. Vayishma Elohim et na'akatam. Hashem heard the call of the Jewish people. Vayizkor Elohim et berito. And Hashem remembered the deal, the covenant that He had with the Jewish people, or with who? Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. The brit that He did with Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov. The promise that He made our Abot, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, that I will take care of your children, I will make sure that they come out of Mitzrayim and I'll bring them back to Eretz Yisrael. Pasuk continues, and we said in the Pasuk that we quoted, Vayar et onyenu. Hashem saw our oni, our suffering. What is this referring to over here? Because there's three terms in this Pasuk, onyenu, amalenu, and lahatzenu. And you can say, okay, our suffering. One means toil, one means pressure. What is that referring to? Says the Haggadah, Onyenu zo perishut derech eretz. This is referring to the fact that the Jewish men couldn't be with their wives. Perishut means separation of derech eretz. Derech eretz is the way of the land. It's a clean word of husband and wife being together and having children. The work that the Goyim put on the Jewish people was done also with the intent that the Jewish husbands should not be with their wives and increase in number. Like it says in the Pasuk, Vayar Elohim et bnei Israel, Vayeda Elohim. Hashem saw the Jewish people and He understood. Again, the Torah is speaking in a clean way. Vayeda, why does it say Vayeda? He understood. It's not clean to say what the problem was. That's one proof. Another proof that this is the Onyenu referring over here to the separation between husbands and wife. We know that the first time the Torah says that husband and wife were together, it says in the word Vayeda. For example, or not for example, where we see by Adam and Hava, Vayeda Adam et Hava ishto, and Adam knew his wife, and therefore she bore him a son. She gave birth to a third son called Shet. Okay, the Torah again uses the word Vayeda. So this is when it says Vayeda Elohim. Hashem knew means He understood what the problem was over here, and that was Perishut Derech Eretz, the separation between husbands and wives. Next, the Haggadah explains, what does it mean in the Pasuk? It says, Vet amalenu, in our toil. What toil did Hashem see? It says Haggadah, Elu habanim. That's referring to the children. Like it says in the Pasuk, Vaitzav Paro, Lechol amo lemor. Paro gave a command to all his nations, saying, Kol haben hayilod, hayora teshichuhu. Every child that's born, throw him into the river. Just keep the daughters alive. What do you see? Says the Haggadah over here, our toil, our work, a person works his whole life for what? For his children. And that's what we worked for, and that's what they do. They took that and they threw it away in front of our eyes. They threw it into the river, they killed them in front of our eyes. The next part of the Pasuk says, Ve'et lahatzenu. Hashem also saw lahatz, a pressure. Says the Haggadah, what is the hatzen referring to over here? Zeh haddahak. That's the pressure that they had. Kemoshe demar, like it says in the Pasuk also, when Hashem was talking to Moshe, telling him, V'gam ra'it et lahatz Hashem mitzrayim lahatzim otam. I saw the pressure that the Egyptians had on the Jewish people. What pressure? And the Hachamim tell us that as the work became worse, harder and harder, they always had a certain amount of bricks that they had to make. This pressure is not something physical. Besides that, if a person wasn't able to pay his dues, let's say he was supposed to produce 400 bricks, and he wasn't able to do 400 bricks, the punishment was tremendously horrible. They would take the child of that person, and they place him in the bricks instead of the bricks that he was supposed to make. So the consequences were terrible, but that's not the pressure. The pressure was that person has to present these bricks. You know what it is? It's emotionally straining. It's constantly on your mind. I have to go. You have no rest until you do what you have to do. That lahatz, that pressure which made the Jewish people suffer on an emotional level, that also Hashem recognized. It wasn't just the physical suffering that the Jewish people went through, but it was even the emotional. Now, the next part of the Haggadah, we get up to the next pasuk the fourth pasuk in Parashat Ki Tavo. It says in the pasuk, "Vayotzienu Adonai miMitzrayim biyad hazaka ubizar netuya umora gadol motot moftim." Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim in a strong hand, in an extended arm, with great fear, with signs and miracles. And these will be explained now in the next part of the Haggadah, which will lead into the Makot and eventually the explanation of the Makot. Let's begin. Vayotzienu Adam Mitzrayim. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. The Haggadah, the author of the Haggadah wants to emphasize over here that it was Hashem. And he says, Lo al yedei malach. It wasn't done through a messenger like a malach, an angel, v'lo al yedei saraf, or the type of angels called saraf, like we say in the prayer, Usrafim v'hayot hakodesh, right? It wasn't done through a saraf, a higher level angel. It wasn't even done through a messenger. Even Moshe Rabbeinu was not the messenger. He was just delivering the word, but it was Hashem himself who took us out. As the Haggadah says, Kadosh Baruch Hu b'chbodo v'atzmo. Hashem himself with his honor himself came and took us out. Shneimar. How do I know? It says it clearly in the Pasuk in Parashat Bo. Ve'abarti be'eretz Mitzrayim b'layla hazeh. I will go and pass through the land of Egypt on this night. And I will strike every firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, from man to animal, and with all the gods of the Egyptians also, I will act punishments. I will pay back shefatim, mishpat. I'll pay them back what they deserve. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. It says clearly over here, I will take care of them. I will strike them. I, Hashem, made this declaration, now take them out. And this explains the first part, Vayotzeinu Hashem miMitzrayim. Next, it says in Haggadah, in the Pasuk, Ve'abarti be'eretz Mitzrayim. I'll pass by the land of Egypt. And again, Baal Haggadah wants to emphasize it was Hashem himself going to Eretz Mitzrayim. And now the Baal Haggadah is going on the Pasuk that we just quoted above, to elaborate on it a little bit more. He says, Ani v'lo malach, like I explained before. Hashem is going to pass, no malach. Ve'keticho bechor, when Hashem says, I'm going to strike every firstborn, which is usually could be done also by another set of angels called saraf. Saraf in the word could also imply a snake, also called the saraf because it has a poisonous venom that could burn through a person's body. But over here, again, the strike that Hashem gave upon the Egyptians, which killed their firstborn, it was also done al yedei Hashem, ani v'lo saraf. And when Pasuk says that through all the gods of the Egyptians, I'm going to do punishment, and again, Hashem is saying, I will do. The Haggadah is pointing out, it's Hashem v'lo shaliyah, it's not a messenger. Ani Adonai, says in the Pasuk, I am Hashem, says the Haggadah, the explanation means, Ani hu v'lo aher, it's me, nobody else. This is the Pasuk which proves the point that we mentioned right above. Now we go back to the original Pasuk that we brought in Parashat Ki Tavo, Vayotzeinu Hashem miMitzrayim. We said first of all, Beyad Hazaka, with a strong hand. What does it mean, a strong hand? So the Haggadah explains, a strong hand, you know what that means? That's referring to the specific makas, one of the plagues. Which one is that? Zohad Deber. That's the fifth makah, which is called Deber, which brought death to all the animals of the Goyim that were left outside. How do I know this Yad Hazakah is referring to Deber? Like it says by Makkah Deber, where Moshe warned Paro and he told him, you should know, you're getting this Makkah, and he refers to it like this, as it says in the Pasuk. A Pasuk in Parashat Vayera says, the hand, behold, Paro, the hand of God will be amongst your cattle that's in the field, basusim, amongst the horses, bahamurim, donkeys, begemalim, the camels, bakar, the cows, batson, and all the cattle, the sheep. Deber kabed meod. It will be a heavy plague of death. So the Pasuk refers to this Makkah as Yad Hashem. This is a Yad Hazakah, the strong hand of Hashem. Question is, why is this Makkah referred to as a strong hand of Hashem? The answer is because it shows you who's really the boss. all said and done, life is in the hands of Hashem. People could do whatever they want. They could damage you, they could hurt you, they could insult you. But to take a person's life or to keep a person alive is only in the hand of God. Death is a clear sign that there's a God in the world. When there's nothing that can be done and you see that no doctor, nobody can do anything to give life or to take away life, then the people come to the recognition and realization there's a God in the world. And this is why so many people are Hosei B'Tshuvah when a member in the family passes away. Why? And the answer is they realize that there's no escape. There's only one person who could do this, and that's Hashem. So when it says in the Pasuk that Hashem is going to bring the death, the plague of death, although it was only by animals, it still shows Hashem's power, Hashem's strength, and that was through the Makkah of Deber, where Hashem brought the death upon the animals of the Egyptians. And that's the Yad HaZakah, the strong hand. An outstretched arm. Says the Haggadah, Zo Harib, that is referring to the sword. And his sword was in his hand, spread over Yerushalayim. Now, to explain this, let me just give a little bit background to the pasuk that's put over here. The story was when there was a plague in Yerushalayim in the times of David HaMelech, and David HaMelech was praying to try to stop the plague, and the plague was killed, I believe, 70,000 Jews in one day in Yerushalayim in the times of David HaMelech. When David came and he prayed, and he came to pray in Yerushalayim, he saw the Malach with a sword spread over Yerushalayim, bringing the death plague amongst the Jewish people. So this is the referring again. So this pasuk is talking about that Malach, and you see the pasuk attributes the sword that's in his hand with the word Yadon Netiyah, with his hand outstretched over Yerushalayim. So therefore says the Haggadah, when we find a pasuk, the Torah says Hashem took us out, Bizor Netiyah, it's referring to the sword. Question is, where do we find the sword in Mitzrayim? And here we need the Hachamim to explain to us, and the Hachamim tell us that when Moshe announced that there will be a Makat Bechorot, that the firstborn will die, Bechorot said Moshe's batting 9 for 9. He hasn't struck out. He's even had one strike. Every Makkah that he said came, and they came exactly the way Moshe wanted it to come. And now he's saying that the firstborn are going to die. So they made a civil war. They made an army made of firstborn. They came to fight against the army of Paro to let the Jewish people out. And many people died through the sword from that civil war between the Egyptians themselves. Zoah Harib, that's the sword, the Zoah Netuyah. That Hashem outstretched his arm and brought a death amongst the Egyptians, even within their country, separately from the Mecca. Ubmora Gadol. The final statement in this pasuk, no, not the final, sorry, the next statement in the pasuk is Mora Gadol. There was a tremendous fear, says the Haggadah. What's this tremendous fear that was around in the times of Yetziat Mitzrayim? Ze Gilui Shekhinah. That's the revelation of Hashem's presence. This doesn't mean necessarily that people saw God, but people sensed a feeling that there's a God in the world. How do we see that? Says Haggadah, we see it from the pasuk in Pasha Veit Hanan. Pasuk says over there, Moshe was telling the Jewish nation, go check the history books. Has there ever been such a thing in the world that there was any God that tried to take a nation from within another nation, and not just to pull them out, but he pulled them out b'masot, with miracles, otot, signs, muftim, wonders, ubmilhama, with a war, ubiyad hazaka, ubizon netuyah, and he pulled them out with a strong hand, and as such and here we go, this is what we need, ubmoraim gedolim, with a great fear, like Hashem did to your eyes. That means you saw with your own eyes what Hashem did to you in Mitzrayim. This is what we're referring to Gilu Shekhinah. There was a clear understanding in the revelation that the Jewish people experienced in Mitzrayim that God is running the show. And that brings fear. when a person goes even on a lower, much lower level, when a person goes through an event where he recognizes that things were done from Hashgaha, from Hashem, with divine providence, he gives us this fear, like, whoa, wow. Sometimes, let's say a person has a dream, and the interpretation of the dream based on the Gemara means that this is going to happen. And when he sees how it happens, even when he couldn't imagine it happens, he says, whoa, you get the sense, somebody's running the show, it gives you tremendous fear. That's the Morah Gadol, that there is so how Hashem said, I'm going to pull this nation out. And even though the Mitzrayim didn't want, refused, and they fought it, Hashem still did it. And when it was done, they realized, wow, there's a God in the world. That's Gilui Shekhinah. That's the tremendous fear that came in the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Next, the Pasuk says, U'otot. There were signs that were done also in the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim. What is that referring to? Says the Haggadah, Ze Hamateh. The Otot is referring to the stick of Moshe. Moshe Emar, V'tamateh hazeh tekach beyadecha. This stick you should take with your hand. The stick was always with Moshe's hand, and this stick in itself has a story with it, which we don't have time to explain right now. But this stick was the sign that there were miracles that were always going to happen. This is where all the miracles came, always with Moshe's stick. In fact, what we're going to see later on in Haggadah, it says Detzach Adash Be'ahab. Those were actually written on the stick of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's how each Makkah came about from each one. Next, the last statement of the Pasuk was Moftim, with wonders. What are these wonders? Says the Pasuk, it says the Haggadah, it's referring to specific ones. What is that? Zehadam. It's referring to the blood. Hashem, there's another Pasuk that says, Hashem says, I will give wonders in heaven and earth. What are these wonders? Dam, va'esh, v'timirot Hashem. Blood, fire, and timirot is like from the word tamar, what do you call it? A date tree, a palm tree, where the smoke goes straight up. Smokes, pools of smoke, that's the wonders of God. So that's what he's saying over here. But Shammai wa'aretz, the wonders I've given is, what are those wonders? That's specifically referring to the blood. That was the first Makkah where everybody saw what a wonder. The water turned to blood, specifically to the non-Jewish nation.